Welcome to Adults University, where we take adult shit and cut it into kid-sized pieces. My name is Miss A, and today in Show and Tell, we have a special guest by the name of Andrey Yakunichev, who is a CPA and who will share with us an overview of taxes, including the origins and what CPAs do, as well as some things we should keep in mind when we're considering filing for taxes. With that being said, let's get started, shall we?
My name is Andrey Yakunichev. I'm a CPA in Los Angeles. I have master's degree in business taxation from USC. I have been doing it since 2005. I've been doing public accounting, which means I worked for CPA firms in Los Angeles. As a matter of fact, one of the bigger ones, which is Deloitte & Touche, that's where I started my career. And then I went to local firms, so I have seen a lot of tax issues starting from Fortune 100 companies down to moms and pops down the street kind of businesses, individuals, owners, different kind of entities. Today I would like to talk about taxation, and I'll cover historical perspective, how we got where we are today. Then I'll talk about the role of CPAs in business and tax situations for taxpayers, and then we'll discuss framework for employees and self-employed, how everything works, what do you have to think about when you consider your tax situation, and then I will give some practical advice what avenues taxpayers have to deal with their tax issues, problems. So I guess everybody knows taxation without representation. That's one of the more popular phrases associated with taxation that gave rise to American Revolution back in the day. And if you don't know what it means, I strongly recommend you go on Wikipedia and look it up just to have a historical perspective on what pushed the American Revolution. High-level overview: the colonies had to pay tax to the Royal Crown of England, but wouldn't be represented in the process. So that was considered tyranny at the time. And people of the United States decided that if they had to pay government, they would have to participate in government, and that's what pushed the American Revolution. Historically, taxation has always been in human society. Back in the day when the king or lord would have to go to war, they would have to get resources from the subject. So you would pay in your crops or your goods that you produce, but it's always been around. Today it's much more structured, but it's not always been like this. The first time citizens of the United States had to pay income tax was in 1913, and that was in response to the World War II, who had to finance it somehow. And the first tax return when it came out was 1 page long, and it would tax people making, I believe, more than $1 million in today's equivalent, 7% of their income. So less than 10% of the population were subject to income tax when it came out. With time, more and more people became subject to taxation, and nowadays I think if you live in the United States, you pay some kind of tax, be it income tax, property tax, excise tax on gas, sales tax. Anywhere you look, government has a cut. Another big development in taxation was back in 1937 as a response to the Great Depression, where government realized that if you ask people to save money and provide for their own retirement, most people will not be able to do that. And when the Great Depression hit in 1929, a lot of people found themselves out of work with no income, and at that time there was no government program to provide any kind of retirement or pension for people who weren't in the workforce anymore. So that's how Social Security started, and the idea is as you work throughout your life, the government would take a certain percentage of your income and put it aside till you reach a certain age. Right now it's somewhere between 62 and 67 years old, at which point if you don't have any, or even if you do have other income, you would have a supplemental help from the government based on the work you've done in your life. So the CPAs, like, I ask myself, why do my clients need my help? Like, what kind of value do I provide to them? So I often ask my clients, like, why do you seek my services? And I guess the biggest value is that CPAs and other tax professionals, like EAs, which are enrolled agents, CPA stand for Certified Public Accounting, and that's a certification by the state of California that basically readies me to give professional advice related to taxation to people who have questions. And the value that my clients tell me that they seek is to get some kind of assurance that they will not have a surprise tax bill from tax authorities which will distract them from their lives or their businesses. So they want to know that whatever they have to pay, they pay, and they're not going to find themselves in a situation where tax auditor comes and says, oh, you owe us that much money, and then you have to deal with it and understand what went wrong and possibly pay penalties. So CPAs are kind of a repository for best practices in terms of tax advice. Since I have so many clients and I have reviewed and researched a lot of different situations, I know I have the knowledge to tell you like what other people do in the situations that you're in, so I can better guide you to how you should proceed. And normally tax does not result in the decision making. Usually it's what they say, the tail doesn't wag the dog. So whatever your life events are, you just want to make sure it's reflected in your tax returns. Very rarely people would base life decisions on the tax outcomes. So, but it's always good to consider and have an idea of what kind of effect tax will produce on your life. Um, Also, the advice of the CPA is kind of a legal cover against penalties. So if a client comes to me and asks me for advice, and down the line tax authorities come and say, well, the way you did it is wrong and now you owe us money and we'll assess penalties for you not paying your tax at the time when it was due, you can always say, I seeked professional advice from the CPA and that's what he advised, and that would protect you from any kind of penalties. You'll still have to pay the tax, but penalties will be waived and most likely will be covered by a CPA's professional insurance. Now I want to give a high-level overview of how tax works in everybody's life, because everybody knows that you have to pay taxes, but a lot of people not exactly sure. If you ask them to explain how the tax cycle works, they wouldn't be able to tell you. So I'll be talking about employees and self-employed. So if you, let's say, just came out of school and start a new job, what happens? You've never paid tax before. It's kind of new. You get hired by a company. They pay you salary. So the cycle goes, you have to pay tax as you go throughout the year. If you receive a paycheck every 2 weeks from your company, portion of your income gets held by the company and they pay taxes on your behalf during the year. They pay taxes to the IRS, which is Internal Revenue Service, which is a federal tax agency, and they will also pay taxes to your local tax agencies. In my case, that would be California Franchise Tax Board, that collects all the income taxes from California residents. So as you go through the year, each paycheck you get, a portion of it goes to taxes. And when the year is over, you file a tax return, which is a summary of what happened during that year, how much money you have earned, how much money got transmitted on your behalf to the IRS and your, let's say, state of California, and then you compare how much your income, based on the income that you've made in this year, how much tax you have to pay versus how much tax has already been paid by your employer. And if what you have to pay is higher, then you have an amount due that you have to send with your tax return. If, on the other hand, during the year your employer took more taxes out of your paycheck than you're supposed to pay as determined at the end of the year, then you'll get a refund. So if you don't pay any taxes in, it's highly unlikely you'll get a refund. There are certain circumstances that would generate a refund even though you haven't paid anything. As the government encourages people to participate in labor force, there are certain tax credits like earned income tax credit that if you make very little money, government would actually send you more money for you to trying to make it on your own and participating in the economy. But as a general rule, you get money back only after you pay it in. So that would be the framework, and that's for an employee who gets a W-2 form from the company that hires them. On the other hand, if you're self-employed, you're considered to have your own business. So there is no paycheck coming. Whatever your business makes, that's your income. And you have to pay as you go as well. Only there is no company who actually pays for all the processing of your withholdings and submitting the forms to the government, reporting how much tax you pay. That becomes your responsibility. So every 3 months, once a quarter, you have to pay in as you go. So if you making money, you're supposed to estimate how much income you're gonna have in a year and pay 1/4 of it every 3 months. And at the end of the year, you have to file the same tax return and see how much have you paid in and how much you're actually supposed to pay, and compare and either get a refund or send additional check to the government. And the trap for self-employed is sometimes people think that, great, I got income, somebody is sending me money and gives me the 1099 form, all is well, I'm all done. At the end of the year, they file the tax return only to find out that there is a lot of tax that they're supposed to pay. And tax that you pay on your income is not only income tax. So I guess it's important to understand that a big chunk of tax that people pay is Social Security tax. That's the tax that you will get back when you retire. And that is currently taxed at 15% of your income. So if you're self-employed, let's say you make, let's pick around number $100,000 in a year, 15% of it is going to be tax that you're going to pay to Social Security Administration and the entities that administer Medicare program. And I didn't know that before I started looking into different topics for this presentation, but 75% of people pay more in Social Security tax than they do in income tax right now. The income tax is the portion of the tax that you pay later on whatever income is left after you pay your Social Security taxes. So if you're self-employed, you have an option to take more deductions on your income that are associated with your business. Whereas when you're an employee, you're very limited to what you can write off. And write off meaning deduction reducing your income so that your tax base is smaller, so you pay less tax. So if you're self-employed, definitely a good idea to talk to some kind of tax professional or do research. There are a lot of resources on internet nowadays talking about different kind of deductions for different kind of situations for taxpayers. It's very rare, but I did in my 12 years of doing taxes. I had a couple of clients who would know the tax situation better than I would, and it's always a pleasure to work with people who are very knowledgeable and plan ahead and know what's happening on their tax returns. That would actually teach me a thing or two. So if you want the best result, definitely a good suggestion to understand what your tax situation is and what you can do about it to reduce your tax. Just to give you a point of reference, people talk about tax reform and tax law and tax regulations. So the tax law people refer to is codified. It's actually 60,000 pages of legal language trying to cover as many possible situations that taxpayers find themselves in and tell people how to make a decision on what should be done in terms of tax, how much tax should be paid in any particular situation. It's a lot of material out there, a lot of ground covered. Not one CPA knows all of it. People specialize in certain industries, and let's say you're in an entertainment industry in Los Angeles, you'd be much better off talking to a CPA who deals specifically with the entertainment industry and would tell you what the best practices are, since it's been established over a long period of time and people are finding better ways to do things and find out what works and what doesn't, versus somebody who specializes in manufacturing. In terms of practical advice, what options do you have to deal with your taxes? Nowadays there are a lot of software providers who have very good software packages to deal with more simple tax situations. So if you have a job and you get a W-2 form at the end of the year, maybe you have a house and a couple kids, a program like TurboTax would probably diagnose your tax situation, ask you the right questions, and give you a fairly good result if you want to find out what's happening and how to do it. And a lot of banks have programs with TurboTax. I know I have Bank of America bank account, So they have a special for customers to use TurboTax to file their taxes. And if you do it yourself year after year, it becomes easier. Your information is already captured by the vendor, so you don't have to retype the same information each year and figure out each year what you need to do for your tax return. There are other packages. There are also tax firms like H&R Block or Liberty Tax, I believe. You see advertisement all over the city on the streets, people advertising that there are tax offices in your neighborhood. By all means, check it out. Maybe if you have somewhat more complex situation or you're not very comfortable doing it yourself, go talk to them. My only advice is don't procrastinate and don't wait until the last week. If that happens, you probably won't get as good of advice, and your price for tax preparation will be much higher. A lot of schools provide free tax clinics to taxpayers. I believe it's under 50,000 of income. So if you want to have somebody look in your tax situation but you don't have the money to spend on it, you could check out the tax clinics where students or like with accounting majors and their professors, they actually help taxpayers fill out tax forms and provide advice on the questions you might have. Good rule, always file your tax returns on time. Even if you don't have the money, file the tax return and deal with the money side later. A lot of people tend to think that I don't have the money, what's the point of filing tax return? I'll just deal with it when I have the money. It saves you a lot of money in penalties. If you just let the government know that here's my situation, I owe some money and I'll pay them when I can, versus just going on the ground and not letting them know what's happening with you, because chances are they receive some kind of information from your employers or contractors who pay you that you should be reporting, and they know that you need to pay tax. And if you just go off the grid, you're not gonna stay there for long. And I think the IRS joke is appropriate at this point. I was talking to a couple of former IRS attorneys and actually asked them, do you have any good IRS jokes? Which they didn't. So I went online just to see what's out there, and I found a lot of very mean IRS tax jokes. So I found one which wasn't mean, which I'll share with you. So this lumberjack retires and decides to open a bar. And business goes well. He has customers and bar life is happening. So he decides, why don't we figure out who is the strongest man in the establishment? And he goes, let's do this. Let's have a lemon. We'll cut it in half and I'll squeeze it as hard as I can. And if anybody can squeeze it harder and get more juice out of the lemon, then we'll know he's stronger than me. But I think I'm the strongest guy in the joint. So he does that and he goes, I'll give you guys a deal. If any one of you can squeeze more juice out of this lemon, you'll have 2 free drinks for the next year. If you can, then you buy a round for everybody in the bar. Great, everybody is excited. All the guys who think they can do it, try it. Nobody can squeeze any more juice out of the lemon after the barman. So this goes on for a couple of years, and people try, and he is the strongest guy. So one day this guy rolls into the joint in a suit, tie, kind of nerdy looking, bald with glasses, and he sees the deal on the wall, saying, yeah, you get free drinks for a year if you can get some juice out of the lemon after the bartender squeezes it. He goes, okay, I would like to try. Everybody hackles, waiting for the free round of drinks. So the bartender squeezes the lemon, gives it to the guy, and to everybody's amazement, he squeezes like 6 more drops of juice out of the lemon, and everybody goes, who are you? Are you like another lumberjack? Are you like a mechanic? Are you some martial arts master? He goes, no, I work for the IRS. So the point of the story is, unofficial motto of the IRS is, we got what it takes to take what you got. So be nice to them. They're good people. It's a big organization with a lot of resources. They employ more than 100,000 people. Some people have bad experiences with them, but I believe they do the best they can with the resources that they got, and they're doing their job. So try to be nice to them, and they'll be professional back. If you have any questions, you can post them, and I'll do my best to respond to them. Every taxpayer is different, everybody's situation is different. What can be applicable to one situation might not be applicable to another based on the circumstances. So it's always good to research it on your own to kind of understand what's out there. Again, there are plenty of resources nowadays. I briefly looked it up. I think I went through like a couple pages of Google search for taxation for young people, describing different tax deductions available if you're fresh out of school, if you're moving for a job, if you're saving for the house, what's the best possible strategies that are available to you in terms of tax. So look it up, and you will have questions. You can get free tax advice whenever you go to talk to the tax professional before you engage them. So they'll tell you. You can interview few of them to find who has more relevant experience to advise you, and make a decision. Do you want to engage them or do it on your own?
Well, that's it for today. Just a simple overview of taxes, as well as some things to keep in mind when you're filing. If you have a specific question you'd like to ask Andrey, please post it down below and I'll be sure to pass it along, and when he gives me the answer, I'll post back to you. Thank you for attending class. Go ahead and do your homework by subscribing to this channel and thumbs up in this video. My name is Miss A, and until next time, remember, you must be this tall to pay bills.